Again, thank you for joining us. My name is Wendy Dant. It's my privilege to be the president of One Southern Indiana. We have been the Chamber of Commerce and Local Economic Development Organization for Clark and Floyd Counties since 2006. The better way to describe it is we have a role to play in the regional economy, not only when things are good, but we're here for you when things are tough. And this is exactly what we're going through right now. Let me just give you a rundown of events. I'll introduce Senator Young here in just a second while our guests continue to arrive. You should see him on the screen when he's speaking, and as promised, he'll give you an update on the CARES Act, the federal stimulus bill. And then after that, we've asked Amber to moderate your questions. So to do this, type your question into the chat feature. When the senator is done speaking, she'll ask your questions of the senator, and we'll keep that conversation moving. But I do want to get started and say welcome. This is One Southern Indiana's inaugural Zoom event. This is our first ever event on the Zoom platform, so we're all still learning. Thank you for bearing with us. And I want to thank Senator Todd Young for agreeing to be our first guest as we're learning. He is truly a brave man. As I mentioned, some of the questions, if you have questions, field those through the chat feature on Zoom. Send those in. Amber is going to moderate those when the senator is done talking. And then, and there he is. Well, hello, Senator.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you, Wendy.
Good to see you. I'm going to do a quick introduction of you, and then we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. So Senator Todd Young has been Indiana's U.S. Senator since 2017 after serving as our U.S. representative for 6 years from Indiana's 9th Congressional District. He currently serves on the U.S. Senate committees on finance, foreign relations, commerce, science and transportation, and small business and entrepreneurship. Todd's first jobs were delivering newspapers, mowing lawns, and providing janitorial services. Now, so he's a true Hoosier in every aspect of the way. Todd enlisted in the U.S. Navy and entered the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He graduated with honors in 1995 and accepted a commission in the U.S. Marine Corps. While in service to his country, he put himself through night school at the University of Chicago, where he earned his MBA with a concentration in economics. After serving a decade in the military, he spent a year in England writing a thesis on the economic history of Midwestern agriculture. He earned his master's from the School of Advanced Study in London. After a stop in Washington, D.C., Todd returned home to Indiana in 2003. He worked several years as a management consultant, advising private and public organizations on adding value to the customers. He again put himself through night school, this time earning his JD from Indiana University. Todd and his wife, Jenny, currently reside in Johnson County, Indiana, and have 4 young children, Tucker, Annalise, Abigail, and Ava. So Senator Young, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to hear more about what your world has been like the last couple of weeks. Senator Young.
Well, I thank you so much, and I was just checking to see how much time we have. I want to make sure that we use this time in a way that's efficient and useful to all your members. Wendy, great to see you again, and look forward to our continued work together. I am grateful to all of those who tuned in. I have a fairly long-standing relationship with this group now, and with so many of your member companies, and I know these are unprecedented times where we have a public health crisis meeting an economic crisis, and we're trying to act boldly as we help all of you find our way in the midst of this. I am trying, as we all are, to adapt to this new form of communication, at least new for some of us. I didn't know what Zoom was. I wish I had purchased an equity stake in the company prior to this pandemic hitting. And I still don't know how to move away the chat box from my face. Nonetheless, I'll forge on, and I thank all of you for your questions. So I'm a member of the Senate Finance Committee and the Small Business Committee. So I played a fairly active role in helping to put together this third of 3 packages to help with the response to this pandemic. The first package was a fairly modest package in the larger scheme of things, still very generous, $7.7 billion to prepare and respond to the health effects of this virus. The second sort of tranche was to provide free testing and to address the sick and emergency leave challenges that many of our workers are facing. And then the third package was the shock and awe package, the CARES Act, which passed just days ago, signed into law by President Trump on March 27th. And since then, some of the provisions, including the small business provisions that I know many of you have questions about, are being implemented. And we'll get into some of that. And I'm going to be ably assisted by Ann Gordon on this teleconference. Ann is my tax counsel, who has really grabbed the bulls by the horn, and she's walking point for me on much of my stimulus response, so she can get into some of the nitty-gritty on your questions. But the CARES Act consists, and I'll try and be fairly concise here so we can spend a lot of time with questions, but it consists of direct payments to households, support to our employers of all sizes, help for hospitals and health providers, and some help directly to workers, unrelated to those provisions for small businesses to keep people attached to the workforce. So I'll again go quickly through those provisions, and we'll open up for questions. As I dive into this, know that for those of you who have access to your browser right now or want to make a note of this with your pen, we've put together a toolkit of frequently asked questions and guide documents for small businesses and other entities on our website. We've received a lot of feedback, and we're told that it's been quite helpful, and we'll continue to update that and optimize that document based on your feedback. But you can find those resources at young.senate.gov/coronavirus. And I'll probably plug that again towards the end. The CARES Act. Direct payments to household, $1,200 per individual, $2,400 per married couple, $500 for dependents. Those payments are made through direct deposit. If you filed taxes last year and you have an account that's on record with the IRS, those payments can be made in very short order to individuals that make up to $75,000. For a household that makes between $75,000 and $99,000, the payments begin to taper off, and then there are no payments going to individuals who make more than $99,000. In addition to those direct payments, there are several different routes. In fact, 3 different routes. One can go if you're a small business person. Small business was defined in this legislation as an enterprise that employs 500 or fewer individuals. The decision was made that if you have a level of employment up to the 500 threshold, you might not be equipped to work directly with the Department of Treasury or the Federal Reserve to negotiate the terms of a loan or a loan guarantee, and therefore it might be easier to go work through your local bank or credit union. So we took the existing, we've taken the existing 7A Small Business Administration loan program, beefed that up, as it were, and that is one of the 3 routes available to our smaller enterprises. Again, 500 or less, you can get a loan of up to $10 million for payroll support through what we are calling the Paycheck Protection Program. The other route, if you will, second of 3, is an employer protection, an employer retention credit that is available to different companies. And then the last one is deferral of payroll tax credits. We understand that this is an incredibly, we've gone from the best economy in 50 years with people investing in the future on property, on plants, on equipment, on workforce development. So many companies naturally don't have liquidity, and we needed to act incredibly quickly to get some money out the door. And it's probably going to take a while for us to fully come back as well. So we have deferred payroll tax payments for those who take this third route to 2021 and 2022. So no payroll tax on the employer side for this tax year. Half would be paid in 2021, the other half in 2022 if you take that route. Those are business decisions. We've given you 3 different avenues of opportunity as it relates to ways to continue to maintain some liquidity and maintain your workforce. Make sure that they remain attached to you so you don't have to reconstitute your whole business on the back end of the healthcare situation. Help for workers, aside from the payroll provisions, we've expanded the unemployment assistance program. Now on top of whatever state level assistance is available, someone who applies for this unemployment compensation program will get an additional $600. That was a decision made through negotiations. Frankly, it was the Democrats that wanted a flat $600 across different states. I recognize that creates some economic distortions for some individuals. My hope is that as neighbors see tens of millions of, as individuals see tens of millions of other Americans and some of their neighbors who are out of work and really anxious, they're going to hold on to good jobs and not go on unemployment assistance, knowing that that in the short term might be more remunerative for them. We've also extended the length of the unemployment assistance program. So giving an additional 13 weeks of unemployment benefits through December 13, 2020 for eligible individuals after the state benefits are no longer available. The last category I thought I'd go into is help for hospitals and health providers, because all the things I've mentioned so far won't really matter if we don't staunch the actual coronavirus, deal with the underlying challenge here. So we've provided $100 billion in relief for hospitals and healthcare workers who are on the front lines of dealing with COVID-19. We've ensured that all Americans receive free COVID testing and, when available, vaccines. We've improved access to telehealth and home services so that people don't have to leave the home if they're symptomatic or otherwise seeking care. They don't need to go into hospitals, which aren't particularly safe places these days on account of this COVID-19. And other critical, more flexible funding available to states and localities so that they'll have the flexibility to meet needs. I think I can speak for really my colleagues, probably on both sides of the aisle. We stand ready to do more if the American people need more. But at this point, this senator is waiting to see how this package is implemented, what the additional needs are, and within the contours of this package, how we can be of assistance to all of you. With that, would love to open it up for questions. And once again, I really appreciate this opportunity.
Senator, thank you so much. We appreciate that. I'm going to start while Amber is getting some of the questions organized. Let me start by just asking the question. There's a lot of information out there for businesses on what may be the best source or the best route for them, especially the small businesses. My question, you mentioned your website. So as we look for that, where would you, is there any other source you would recommend folks go to get some of the advice besides the website you referenced? And I believe Amber put that in the chat section. So other resources you would recommend?
Sure. In addition to our toolkit, to the extent people are seeking public health information or some operational information about school districts and other things of a more state and local nature, know that the governor has set up a hotline. It's a war room of sorts where you can call in and receive answers, and they will channel you to the right government agency or the right person. The governor rather, being an executive, he has a lot of resources at his disposal, and you should utilize that. at the state or local level. Those would be my real recommendations. I know that a number of businesses have been relying on their private sector counterparts. Many law firms are offering webinars to help people make these business decisions. CPAs and PEOs, which are sort of the companies that handle back office functions for companies, handle their payroll, manage their healthcare programs. They're also effective resources. I'm not in a position to pitch any in particular, but those are all categories of resources that I recommend you look into.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Amber, why don't we turn it over to you to start moderating the questions that have come through on the chat feature. Again, if you have a question, go to the chat feature, type that, and Amber will pose those questions. Amber, go ahead.
Thank you, Wendy. Bear with me as we do have lots of questions coming in. We're going to try to get to them as quickly as we can. Thank you again, Senator Young. One of the first questions is that we are getting conflicting information on how to handle affiliated companies. So CPAs are saying you should only file one PPP application, while the bank is saying you should do 2. Can you clarify?
No, I can't. I'm sorry. But perhaps Ann can. Ann is on the line with us, or one of my other very talented staff members, I think, has joined us on the line, and they may be able to chime in on that. But that would be confusing.
So, Senator, this is Ann, I'm here.
Yeah.
So it depends on your business. If you have a restaurant business, for instance, you would need to apply per location. Certain other businesses are affiliated. So you're going to need to work with the bank and look at the SBA rules and determine what makes sense. So you can only have one loan per business, but depending on what type of business you have, each location might be considered a separate business. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Ann. Senator, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Does a business have to go to an SBA lender approved bank, or are other banks authorized to lend as well?
I think they have expedited SBA approval for this narrow purpose. I think they've opened this up to other banks. If I got that wrong, Ann, chime in, but I think the intention was to broaden the scope of the number of sites you can go to.
That's 100% correct. Yeah. And they're also looking at some non-bank lenders and approving. They're looking to approve things like PayPal and Square this week as well.
FinTech, right.
Excellent. Another question, we're actually getting a lot of this question. The loan forgiveness period is only 8 weeks. However, the economy is still not, up and running. So will the loan forgiveness period be extended to better match what is happening with this coronavirus cycle?
We're scheduled to go back to Washington 3 weeks from now. Now, I don't know whether that's realistic or not. We'll have to see how the public health situation evolves and what the needs are of our economy and of public health, and if they're being met. But I'm prepared to extend current deadlines if necessary, so beyond an 8-week period, so that we can make sure folks can keep workers attached to their workforce and get to the back end of this virus response.
Excellent, thank you. I'm looking for more questions here. Again, we have quite a few. Okay. Ann, is there any way that you can provide your contact information, or someone is asking, I know you're doing a great job answering the questions today. Is there any contact information you have, or a place where they should go to help find some of these answers?
So a lot of the answers are on the senator's website. I chatted my email address, but I can give it. It's Ann, ANNE _Gordon, GORDON @young.senate.gov.
Thank you, Ann. Again, we appreciate your help today as well. Let's see here. It says, is loan forgiveness for payroll of all the employees during the qualified time. If that makes sense there. Okay, let me do this. What is the senator's best guess on when the stimulus checks will begin to be in our accounts?
I spoke with the Secretary of Treasury about this very question a couple of days ago, and he said almost immediately, as if, again, if you filed a 2019 return and you have not changed your account information. We know that some people are underbanked or they've changed their account information. So my recommendation would be to file your 2020 return, update that, get the information in the IRS, and then they will be armed with it and can make they can go ahead and make the deposit of funds. But we're not sure administratively, candidly, whether all that information will be input and you'll receive the direct deposit before you receive a hard check. So in light of these extreme times, I'd just rather be safe than sorry. I'd get that information updated. If the IRS does not have updated information, or you do not have a bank account to which they can wire your $1,200, $2,400, $500 for each additional dependent, then you're going to be receiving a hard check. And that will take a few weeks, is how the Treasury Secretary put it.
Senator, we're also getting requests to talk a little bit more in depth about the employee retention credit. Can you do a quick recap on that for those who are just maybe joining us?
Yes. Ann, why don't you go into this, because some guidance I think is still forthcoming as it relates to this. It hasn't been fully clarified, but you've got the most up-to-date information.
So the employee retention credit is a 50% credit on an employee's wages. And there are two paths on that. For small businesses, which is defined as under 100 people, the business can be open or closed, but you must have a decrease of 50% of your business versus last year. So your gross profits need to decrease by 50%. And so then you get a 50% credit on the first $10,000 of wages for your employees. However, this also interacts with the Family First provision. So if you've given an employee sick leave, or they're taking the extended FMLA to care for a child, you don't get a credit under kind of Families First and under the CARES Act. And then for larger businesses, the business must be closed.
Now, Ann, that was a lot of information for me.
Sorry.
It was clear, but it was a lot of information for me. So has that been updated on our toolkit?
There's some limited information on our toolkit which we can update, but the IRS has a great website, and that's where all their guidance is coming out. So I would advise people go there as well. And there's a link to the IRS website on our website.
Okay.
Thank you again, Ann.
Thank you.
We are getting, so what if the business hasn't done their 2019 taxes? Can they still get assistance without it being completed, or do they need to go ahead and do those taxes?
They can get assistance now.
Okay. All right.
And yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's see.
Of course, the tax filing date, many of you already know this, but the tax filing date has been extended into the summer. So for those who are concerned about the here and now and getting your taxes filed on time, know that that date has been extended.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts on how this will impact our taxes in the long run? In other words, is our government providing all the help to get us through this, and how will we pay for this in the long run?
No. Well, what we're doing right now is we're investing in our future. I mean, we're giving people a bridge to reopen the economy and ensuring that in the meantime, people can sustain themselves. They can pay their rent and for food and basic, essentials. The most fiscally irresponsible thing we could have done would be nothing. To stand aside and to allow businesses that were otherwise healthy to be absolutely decimated, thus turning tens of millions, hundreds of millions of taxpayers into people on, fellow citizens on public support, which is what no one wants. So the sooner we can staunch the virus, the sooner we can begin opening the economy up again and bringing in revenue. I'll remind everyone that prior to this pandemic hitting, we were bringing in more revenue to the federal government than we ever had before. So the tax reform and the regulatory reform and the other work that we've done at the federal level was creating an environment to sustain the longest period of economic expansion in American history. Wages were rising, and tons of revenue was coming into the federal coffer. So we need to resume that level of growth. We understand it's going to take some time. And then once we stabilize our economy, of course, we know there's certain programs of government, healthcare programs and pension programs that are unsustainable. We need to pivot to that and be adults and take care of that as well.
Thank you. It seems that there may be some confusion on the forgiveness of the loans and the 8-week period. Earlier, we had asked about if there was going to be an extension. The question is, once a business has received the loan, they've met the criteria of keeping the employees required for that 8-week period, isn't the loan essentially forgiven and fully paid off? Can you clarify your thoughts on that?
It is a forgivable loan, assuming that the monies are used through this 7A program is what I think you're referring to, to retain your workforce. It's used for payroll and other fixed costs, rent, mortgage payments, utilities, things like that. There will be auditing done in the fall, as I understand it, to ensure that if you receive $400,000 from the federal government and spend only $300,000 of it to meet your fixed costs, and then $100,000 on, granite countertops and other such things, that you'll be paying the federal treasury back the $100,000 balance.
Thank you for clarifying. Let's see. Are there any special provisions for vet-owned businesses right now? Someone who is a veteran.
There was a provision. I'm having to rack my brain here because it was a massive piece of legislation. There was something pertaining to veterans in it. If Ann recalls, please don't hesitate to pipe up.
So C-19 businesses, which are veteran-owned businesses and nonprofits, are eligible for SBA loans, and the normal SBA loan rules kind of apply. So there are those provisions, and then of course there's like the veterans health care and other provisions as well.
Thank you, Ann. Let's see, I have another question here. Thank you all for all of the questions, by the way. I'm seeing them. Just keep them coming in. Senator, are you okay? You still okay with
I'm great. I'm great.
Okay. Wonderful.
I think this is helpful to your members, so that's the purpose of this.
It is. We very much appreciate it. All right, so next question. So the expected peak for the coronavirus in this region is May. What is being done to ensure that we have the medical equipment that's needed to combat this?
Well, at the federal level, we've provided significant resources, $100 billion in relief for our hospitals and our healthcare workers. The president has invoked the Defense Production Act is really as a sort of Damocles over the heads of a lot of businesses that he and the administration and others believe have the capacity to scale up production of a lot of the necessary supplies. But frankly, that act isn't typically necessary. I have apparel makers in Zionsville. I have plastic molders in Madison that are making masks and the face masks respectively. I've got Eli Lilly in Indianapolis that's making, it's helping out with the testing, kit analysis. We've got General Motors in Kokomo that's making ventilators. That's just in Indiana. And I've just given you a sampling of it, to say nothing of all the distilleries out there who are making hand sanitizer. And I think our toilet paper manufacturers are keeping up as well. Listen, we are prepared to provide more financial resources if necessary at Congress. That's really been our primary function, is to ensure that our states and localities have the wherewithal, and our federal government, where appropriate, to procure things, to ensure that things are produced in as timely fashion as possible. And then we're leaving it to the executives, the president at the federal level. And then the legal authorities are pretty clear. The governors wield a lot of power at the state and local level. And we're here to support them to the extent they're unable to support themselves. And they're really not. The state and local authorities aren't used to dealing with something like this, which is why we've dedicated a lot of resources with the borrowing authority of the federal government to help fight this. So that's the congressional level. We also have an oversight function, and we will continue to oversee the executive branch and its response to this, and help them out however we can.
Thank you. Let's see. Thank you, Anne, for, it looks like you're the one posting these answers in here too in the comments section. We do appreciate you helping keep up with all the questions. So let's see. Do employees filing unemployment have to file for these $600 a week additional payments? Not sure I understand that question.
Well, I think the question was when, first, the rules for unemployment haven't changed. So a person cannot receive unemployment compensation unless they've been terminated. So it's not as though someone who's lost their job on account of them quitting, they're going to be able to receive unemployment compensation. So that's been a misnomer out there as it relates to that additional $600. The $600 will be made available from the federal treasury on top of whatever the state already gives under normal unemployment circumstances. And then an additional 13 weeks will be tacked on to the end of that so that people can stay on unemployment longer if necessary. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Is there a local or regional SBA office to consult about specific situations? So for example, if someone is putting together a plan to purchase a small business that may be on the verge of, let's say, insolvency, what could they go and get help on the SBA loan specifically?
I know the SBA website, I hope it doesn't crash, but the SBA website is a good resource. In-person sort of interaction with SBA officials is not going to be possible under these circumstances. I do think there's a local SBA office. Wendy would maybe know the answer to that in the area. But, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to follow up. Yes, the Indiana Small Business Development Center, they have a New Albany presence. They are working remotely. And so we have been in contact with Carrie Johnson and her team. So let us know if we can make that introduction for anyone.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay. Next question, we're going to do a couple more minutes of questions, probably maybe about 10 more minutes of questions, and then we will let Wendy ask the final question and finish up this conversation. Okay, so is there any chance that the PPP funds, the $349 billion, will be taken by some companies and that others will miss out on a first come, first served scenario?
Yes, it's possible. If necessary, if we're going to track this virus, and if the virus continues to linger, if we haven't contained it, and if those funds have been depleted, I, for one, am prepared to do what it takes to sustain businesses at a time when the federal government has mandated that their workers have to stay home and not come to work for public health purposes, understandably. So, and I'd be surprised if my colleagues aren't open to that as well.
Next question. It is, sorry, I just lost my spot. It is the understanding that if we furlough employees, meaning that they're laid off, that they could still file for unemployment. Is this true? So if they're receiving unemployment, do they have to file separate for the additional $600?
My understanding here, we were looking for guidance on this. My understanding here is that they would not fall under the unemployment provisions, that instead, this was an opportunity, assuming businesses wanted to stay in business, this is an opportunity to retain your workforce, keep them attached to your business. So that's why we have a retroactive date, a look back to February 15, about what your payroll looked like. And yet, if for, because of a collapse in sales, you had to furlough workers, you have the opportunity to hire them back with this 7A loan program or one of the other programs that we've offered to smaller enterprises.
This is Wendy. If I could add to that, thank you, Senator. The Indiana Department of Workforce Development is having a webinar, and it's either the 7th or the 8th, so it's one of the days this week, and they're going to explain how those work together. So you do have to file for unemployment from the state of Indiana, and then the $600 additional piece will be added to that. So stay tuned. They are expecting to provide that guidance. I believe their event is on the 7th or 8th. It has been on the One Southern Indiana Facebook page.
Thank you, Wendy. We are looking up the details now. I believe that is tomorrow at 10:30. We will put the details in the comments section, though, for that event. All right. Let's see. How are you doing, Senator?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Yeah, I'm tracking the text messaging while you're speaking, which is intellectually stimulating.
There are a lot of questions, a lot of good ones too.
Right.
So let's see. And again, thank you, Anne, for all of your help in answering some of these questions as we're going through. Are new small businesses, can they be approved for these loans as well? Or do they have to be in business for a certain amount of time?
New small businesses can indeed, and do you have to, as of February 15, be a legal business entity with filings on record with the Secretary of State, or do we know the answer to that question? Is there a date? Yeah.
Yes, it's February 15th. You needed to be in business as of February 15th.
Okay, this is a long question, so I'm going to try my best to clearly communicate this to you. So it looks like it is the law's intent to include independent contractors in the PPP loan process, as they are included in section BB under the definition of payroll costs. But advisors are saying that payments to commissioned independent contractors cannot be, sorry, I just lost, you might be able to see it on there.
Yeah.
Cannot be included in the PPP base. Our company's operated
payments to commission independent contractors cannot be included in the PPP base. That to me makes sense that they did that. There may be an argument against that, but yes. Okay. They're independent contractors. They're not on the payroll. Our company will be obligated to pay these independent contractors for the sales they made. I'm sorry, I'm doing your job. and this is a significant part of our monthly costs, just like payroll. So we're allowed to include these payment obligations. So are we allowed to include these payment obligations in our PP base? Or will the independent contractors be compensated for these under the program rolling out for them this week? The independent contractors instead will have the opportunity to receive compensation on their own To the extent this is what I have just said is unclear and requires further elaboration, we have the Wizard of Oz in the background, and Gordon. And does that pretty much cover it, or do you have
yes.
any? Okay.
So Treasury's going to be issuing guidance on this question because there's been a little confusion. But the thought now is that independent contractors are going to need to apply for their own S7A loan. But stay tuned.
All right. Thank you.
Wendy,
the question you're asking us will no doubt be asked of others in coming webinars and phone calls. So thank you.
Okay, and thank you so much, Senator, for your time today. I'm going to go ahead and give the floor back to Ms. Wendy Dant, our President and CEO of One Southern Indiana. I think she has one or two final questions for you.
Yes.
And Wendy, I may ask that you repeat the ISBDC information. I think a couple people didn't catch that. So if you would, Carrie Johnson, if you would repeat some of that, that would be wonderful. And again, thank you for your time. I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to you, Ms. Wendy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Amber. Senator, I do want to ask you to focus ahead. As we've talked and as we've said, and as everybody has seemed to agree, there will be an end to this crisis. It's a public health crisis that's created an economic crisis. So the question to you is to ask us your help in looking towards recovery. What would you recommend that we do as a series, as a grouping of communities, as a region, and even as a Chamber of Commerce? How would you recommend that we start focusing efforts towards recovery?
That's a great question. And so this is an unprecedented challenge. I think all of us are struggling to figure out how consumers will respond. That is, will they be sort of hoarding cash and apprehensive to begin spending again? So these are all things that I would recommend that individual businesses give some thought to, and that maybe you do some consultation with some subject matter experts who've studied, say, natural disasters in the United States and in other countries. How does that impact the psychology of a marketplace? The other thing that we should all be thinking about is the extent to which, even if offered objective public health metrics that aren't particularly controversial, at what rate will we see employees returning to the workforce? Now, this can vary culturally. It probably varies across different geographies, even within the United States. But it's something we're all going to have to think about. You know, what is the rate of retention at your workforce? I think it would be unrealistic if you have 450 employees to assume they're all going to come back, right? So that's another contingency area as it relates to the labor force. Another thing I would start, I've asked my team to keep a punch list of ideas as we go through this social experiment of sorts, and identified maybe some silver linings to an otherwise horrible, horrible situation. Are there efficiencies that your business, or more broadly, the community and region, can identify and harness to good advantage on the back end of this thing? I think we're going to be rethinking K through 12 education. My children are able to complete all of their schoolwork within 2.5 to 3 hours. And they do music. They've sort of rediscovered art. They spend a lot of time playing and a lot of time on their social media on the back end of it. But are there ways for your enterprise to sort of optimize operations once we get back on our feet and become even more efficient through distance learning, remote learning? There will be environmental advantages to this, I think, if more people recognize they can learn. We're also being stress tested as a society. We already had a significant child care crisis in this country. We didn't have enough child care workers, qualified, competent workers to care for our children. And it's a really important profession. And so I think to the extent this crisis has magnified other sort of sub-crises, whether it's a lack of child care workers or other, essentials to run a workforce and economy and just keep a community running. We can start to take great notice of those and resolve to do better on the back end. So that's a punch list of things that just come to mind. But I see some real opportunities for all of us and risks on the back end.
I appreciate that very much. I've been taking some notes on your ideas, and we'll look forward to following up with you in the future on those as well. I want to say thank you, Senator. We very much appreciate you. All of this information that you've given us has been helpful. Your support has been wonderful. So thanks to you, your staff, all of your colleagues for your help. I also want to thank Amber and the One Southern Indiana team for our inaugural Zoom event. We got through this. At one point, when I looked at my last check-in, we had 103 participants. So that tells me that this is something we can continue to look to do. Also, the session has been recorded, and we will work to upload it to our website after the event concludes. And I want to remind everybody, this is a crisis that we're going through, but as with most crises, all crises, there will be an end to it. Please know that your One Southern Indiana family is pulling for you. We too are a small business, so we really do know what you're going through. We want to be your source for information and hopefully motivation. So please visit the COVID-19 page on our website. We are updating that daily. Complete the surveys that we've posted there and sent out. It helps us to identify the needs that you as our business members have, and helps us identify those solutions we need to look for. Tune in to our daily Ask the Expert events on Facebook Live. Those are at 10 o'clock every morning, and they are on you can ask for specific advice on a variety of topics: cleaning and sanitation, taxes, insurance, HR issues, real estate, marketing during a crisis, you name it. Let us know what you'd like to hear about. We'll get that on there. Those are also recorded, so you can visit them. And if you need help relaxing, join us tomorrow. We're going to have yoga online at 11 a.m. So look for our information on that. Just know this: we at One Southern Indiana, we are here for you now. We will be here for you after the crisis. We'll get through this together. So stay home, wash your hands, and don't touch your face. Thanks for all of your help. We appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Anna, my team. I appreciate all of you participants, and we're here to be of service. God bless. Enjoy the rest of the day and stay safe.
Thank you.